You check your brokerage app notification, and your heart skips a beat because you just got paid a dividend. You tap the screen, the app loads, and there it is, 17 cents. You did everything right. You saved, you invested, you waited. And in return, you cannot even buy a quarter of a gumball. This is the exact moment where 90% of new investors quit. What is up? I am Ben, and I am here to stop you from rage quitting your portfolio. We need to talk about the silent phase. Most of the financial side of the internet is lying to you about how this game works. You scroll through TikTok or YouTube Shorts and see guys your age claiming they make $5,000 a month in passive income. That is not investing. That is usually a sales pitch for a course. The reality of the stock market is much quieter and, honestly, way more boring in the beginning. There is a very specific reason why your account feels stuck in the mud, and it has nothing to do with picking the wrong stock. It is about a concept called escape velocity. Right now, your money is experiencing gravity. The pull of your bills, inflation, and fees is stronger than the growth of your assets. But there is a specific mathematical threshold where that flips. There is a precise dollar amount where your portfolio switches from manual labor, where you have to push it uphill, to an automatic engine that runs itself. And I promise you, that number is not $1 million. It is not even $100,000. It is actually a number small enough that almost anyone watching this can hit it within a few years if they stop chasing lottery tickets. Let's play a quick imagination game. I want you to hold out your hand right now in front of you. Seriously, do it. Now. Imagine I place an ice cube in the center of your palm. The room is 25 degrees. The ice cube is frozen at 0. As the temperature of the ice cube rises from 0 to 5 to 10 to 20 degrees. Does it look any different? No. It still looks like a frozen block of ice. You are putting in energy, the heat is rising, but you see 0 results. This is exactly where you are with your portfolio. You are at 24 degrees, you have put in the capital, but you have not hit the melting point yet. The moment that ice cube hits 33 degrees, the phase changes and you see water. Most people sell their stocks at 29 degrees because they think the process is broken. A report from Vanguard in 2024 showed that the median 401k balance for people under 25 is just around $3,000. That means you are not behind, you are just in the accumulation zone. You are heating up the ice cube. But if you want to skip the waiting game and get to the melting point faster, you need to ignore the total value of your account. Stop looking at the big number. It is useless. Instead, we need to look for a completely different metric that tells us when the snowball actually starts rolling. There is a specific signal that tells you when you have crossed the line from saving money to building wealth. It is a tipping point where the math stops adding and starts multiplying. If you have ever felt like you are throwing money into a black hole with nothing to show for it, go ahead and hit the like button right now, because we are about to shine a light on exactly how to climb out of that hole. If I asked you right now if your car was working, you wouldn't look at the odometer to see how far you have driven. You would turn the key and listen to the engine. Yet, when it comes to investing, everyone is obsessed with the wrong metric. You are staring at the account balance, the odometer, wondering why you aren't rich yet, when you should be listening to the RPMs of your compounding machine. Let's reframe what working actually means. For a portfolio to be working, it doesn't need to pay your rent today, it just needs to prove that it is alive. The biggest threat to your financial future isn't a stock market crash, it is boredom. We need to talk about psychological yield. This is the return on investment you get in the form of dopamine that keeps you from selling everything and buying a jet ski. Let's do a quick timeline shock to prove why starting now, even with scraps, is non-negotiable. I want you to picture 2 different timelines. Timeline A, you are 20 years old, you invest $50 a month, literally the price of a few coffees, into an S&P 500 index fund until you retire. Timeline B, you wait until you are stable at 40 years old. To get the exact same result as the 20-year-old, you don't invest $50. You have to invest nearly $500 a month. You have to work 10 times harder just to end up in the exact same place. That is the cost of waiting for your portfolio to look impressive. A 2023 study by Dalbar found that the average equity fund investor underperformed the S&P 500 by nearly 10% in 2022 alone. Why? Because when the market got scary or boring, they bailed. They didn't have enough psychological yield to stay in the seat. They treated their portfolio like a savings account instead of a generator. This is why we have to shift your focus from the fire hose mindset to the drip feed. The fire hose is thinking you need a massive windfall to start. The drip feed is understanding that frequency beats intensity. It is better to see a 10-cent dividend hit your account every single month than to wait a year for a bigger payout, simply because that constant notification reminds you that the machine is running. Most beginners focus entirely on the payout amount, but the real magic happens when you look at something called the frequency ratio. I'm going to break down exactly what that is later, and how it can literally predict the day you become financially free. But first, we need to find your magic number. There is a specific dollar amount that changes everything. It is the difference between your money adding up linearly versus multiplying exponentially. If you have been investing for less than 2 years, let me know in the comments. Are you still in the boring phase? Type boring down below so we can see how many of us are in the same boat. Now, let's calculate the exact number you need to hit to escape gravity. The lowest amount you need isn't a fixed number like $10,000. It is a moving target called the self-funding share. This is the specific moment in time when your quarterly dividend payout is exactly high enough to buy one more full share of that same stock without you adding a single penny from your paycheck. This is the mathematical threshold I mentioned earlier. Before this point, you are pushing a boulder. After this point, the boulder grows legs. Let's run the numbers live. I'm going to do a calculator snap right now. Stay with me. Imagine I just snapped my fingers. That is the sound of the math checking out. Let's say you own a popular dividend ETF that costs $80 a share and pays a 3% dividend yield. That is $2.40 a year per share. To get that snowball rolling where it buys one extra share a year, $80, you need to own about 33 shares. 33 shares times $80 is roughly $2,640. That is your magic number for that specific investment. $2,640. Once you hit that number, you own a self-replicating asset. Even if you lose your job, lock your phone, and move to a cave, that account will mathematically guarantee that you own more shares next year than you do this year. It is the financial equivalent of a perpetual motion machine. A report from Hartford Funds in 2023 confirmed that since 1930, dividends have contributed 40% of the total return of the S&P 500. 40%. If you are not hitting that self-funding threshold, you are fighting with one hand tied behind your back. You are ignoring nearly half the gains available to you. If that stat blows your mind, hit the like button so more people realize they are playing the game on hard mode. Now, thanks to fractional shares on apps like Fidelity or Robinhood, you can technically start this snowball with pennies, what we call fractional drip. It is easier, sure, but it doesn't give you that psychological rush of seeing the share count tick up by whole numbers. Aim for the whole share drip. That is the standard. But, and this is a massive but, there is a dark side to this math. When you realize you need $2,600 to hit that milestone, your brain is going to try to trick you. You are going to look for a shortcut to lower that number. You will think, if I just find a stock with a higher yield, I can hit the target with half the money. That thought process usually leads directly to a specific trap that destroys 90% of young portfolios. There is a villain in this story, and it is dressed up as your best friend. When you realize that you need a few $1,000s to get that snowball rolling on a safe, boring stock, you are going to get an idea. You will think, wait, why am I settling for a 3% return? I saw a stock online that pays 12%. If I buy that, I can hit the self-funding number with a quarter of the money. This is the high-yield trap, and it is the fastest way to turn your snowball into a puddle. Let's play a quick game called the Red Flag Quiz, and I'm going to show you 2 stocks. You have 3 seconds to pick the winner. Stock A pays a 3% dividend, but the share price has gone up 40% in 5 years. Stock B pays a massive 12% dividend, but the share price has dropped 30% in the same time. 3, 2, 1. If you picked stock B because of that juicy 12% payout, you just lost money. A company paying a double-digit yield is usually screaming for help. Think about it. If a company is healthy and growing, it doesn't need to bribe you with a 12% coupon to buy its shares. When the yield is that high, it usually means the share price has crashed, or the business is dying. You are buying a sinking ship just because they are serving free drinks on the deck. We saw this happen in real time recently. Look at Walgreens. For years, people bought it for the high dividend. Then, in January 2024, they slashed that dividend by 48% to save cash. If you were relying on that high yield to fund your lifestyle, your paycheck just got cut in half overnight, and your principal investment is worth less too. That is the double whammy of a yield trap. This leads to the erosion effect. Inflation is constantly eating your money at around 3% a year. If your high-yield stock pays you 10% but the stock price drops 5% and inflation eats 3%, your real return is basically a rounding error. You are taking on massive risk for almost zero actual reward. The rule you need to tattoo on your brain is simple. Dividend growth is more important than current yield. You want a snowball that starts small and gets bigger, not an ice cube that starts big and melts away. If you want to build a portfolio that actually survives the next decade, you have to ignore the flashy numbers and look at the history. So, if we can't cheat the system with junk stocks and we don't have $1 million lying around, how do we actually speed this up? How do we hit that self-funding escape velocity without needing a second job or waiting until we are 60? There is a way to hack the speed, but it requires changing where you put the money, not just what you buy. We need to talk about friction. If you are trying to build this snowball in a standard brokerage account, you are running a race with a parachute attached to your back. Every time you get paid a dividend, the IRS is standing there with a blowtorch, ready to melt away 15 to 30% of it before you can even reinvest it. If you want to lower the lowest amount you need, you have to prioritize tax-advantaged accounts like a Roth IRA. In a Roth, your snowball rolls on ice. There is zero friction. Every penny of that dividend gets reinvested tax-free over 30 years. That tax drag in a normal account could cost you tens of thousands of dollars in lost compounding. It is the easiest hack in the book, yet so many people ignore it because they want the money accessible. Trust me, you do not want to access this money. You want it to grow. Let's play a quick imagination game. I want you to imagine every dollar you invest is a tiny employee. Right now, if you are just starting, you have one intern. He shows up late, he works part-time, and he barely produces any value. That is your first dividend. Your goal isn't to make that intern work harder. It is to use his tiny output to hire a second intern. Then those two hire a manager. Then that team builds a department. This is how you visualize the snowflake method. You don't just wait for the dividends to reinvest. You aggressively add active income, snowflakes, to supplement the drip until the team is big enough to hire on its own. This brings us back to that frequency ratio I mentioned earlier. This is the secret sauce for keeping your brain engaged. The frequency ratio is simply the number of times you get paid versus the number of times you pay bills. Most companies pay dividends quarterly, 4 times a year, but your rent is due monthly, 12 times a year. That mismatch kills your motivation because the feedback loop is too slow. To fix this, you can sprinkle in monthly payers. Companies like Realty Income, ticker symbol O, are famous for this. They brand themselves as the monthly dividend company. In 2024, they raised their dividend for the 124th time. Holding a stock that pays you every 30 days aligns your rewards with your life. It boosts your frequency ratio to 1-to-1. Every time you pay a bill, you get a notification that you got paid. That psychological win is often enough to keep you investing when everyone else is quitting. But be careful. Just buying monthly stocks isn't a strategy, it's a tactic. You need a structural plan to go from zero to hero without getting lost in the weeds. So, if we combine the tax-free environment of a Roth, the psychological boost of monthly payers, and the math of the self-funding share, what does the finish line actually look like? I'm going to give you the exact tiered checklist you should aim for. This is the dollar roadmap to hit by age 30 if you want this snowball to eventually replace your job. Here's the tiered checklist I promised you. If you want to win this game by age 30, you don't need $1 million. You just need to hit these 3 specific milestones in order. Tier 1 is the psychological starter. This is just getting $100 into the market. It sounds small, but it breaks the inertia. Tier 2 is the self-funding share we calculated earlier, roughly $2,000 to $3,000 in a specific position so it buys its own growth. But Tier 3 is where the magic happens. This is the bill eraser level. The absolute lowest amount you need to feel financially free isn't enough to retire, it is enough to make one bill disappear. A 2022 study by C&R Research found that the average American underestimates their monthly subscription costs by nearly $130. We are bleeding money on streaming services, music, and apps. Your goal is to build a dividend snowball big enough to pay for just one of those. If you invest roughly $5,000 into a solid dividend growth ETF yielding 3 or 4%, that is going to pay you about $15 to $20 a month. That is your Netflix bill. That is your Spotify premium. The moment your portfolio pays a real-world bill for you, the game changes. You realize that you didn't just save money, you bought your freedom from that monthly obligation forever. That is the real lowest number you should aim for. Let's bust one final myth before we go. You do not need to be a math genius or a Wall Street trader to manage this. In fact, being too smart usually hurts you because you try to time the market. The people who win are the ones who are just stubborn enough to keep buying when the market is boring. So here's your action plan. Step 1, open the account. Step 2, turn on auto reinvest. Step 3, focus entirely on hitting that self-funding share number for just one solid position. Once that first snowball starts rolling on its own, the avalanche is inevitable. Thank you so much for watching. If you are ready to start building that avalanche, I want you to comment the word snowball down below. I'll be looking through the comments to see who is actually serious about this. And do me a huge favor, destroy that like button and hit the subscribe button so this video gets pushed out to more people who need to hear it. I'm Ben, and I'll see you in the next one.